Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique, and today I am joined by Rear Admiral retired Paul Sohl, CEO, Florida High Tech Corridor from Winter Park, Florida. Admiral, thank you for being with me on the show today. Tell us a little bit about you.
Hey, Senior, thanks for and thanks. I'm very blessed to be down here in Central Florida now, and just getting a chance to talk Navy. I realize it's not all about the Navy here, but to meet a shipmate is super. So yeah, just real briefly, 33 years in the Navy, F-18 pilot, test pilot, was again honored and grateful and blessed to be given all kinds of choices. People will ask me, hey, at what point did you decide to make it a career? And I had to think about that question at first. And I don't think I ever thought that way. I really felt like every chance they gave me was just another fun thing to do. I was in the fleet for a while as an F-18 guy, as a young lieutenant on board the Independence when we didn't know about the Middle East, and then the Middle East happened, and that was an interesting chapter. I decided to shift over into the acquisition world, so being a test pilot in research and development, and perhaps that's what got me hooked on this idea of innovation. And I know we'll talk more about that and that sort of thing. Was very honored again to have a chance to command several times, and that really taught me about me more than anything else. When you're responsible for sailors and Marines and Coast Guardsmen and how fascinating they are and the things that they can do, it was just wonderful. So kind of back and forth between the East Coast and the West Coast in the test world. Couple of tours at China Lake for those that are familiar with the high desert of California, the best place to fly. It's a giant sandbox. So I got to do that. Got to spend time in program management and it doesn't often happen with aviators, but in the maintenance world of aviation and logistics. I love that world, taking those, and this from Mayport, and when I was at NAS Jax, at the depot, and taking aircraft that are rode hard, put away wet, and break them apart, and with these great civilians, and putting them back together again and getting them back out to where they need to be with the fleet. And then ended up my tour at the Operational Test and Evaluation Force in Norfolk, and that's where my eyes were sort of super expanded, because now it was no longer just aviation. It was everything to do with making sure things are ready for the fleet, everything from ships to the newest submarine to the smallest medical device. And we had, real sailors and Coast Guardsmen who knew nothing about tests come in and say, have at it. And it was, again, just a huge blessing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I remember the first time I went to NRL. I said,
yeah,
this exists.
Yeah, right.
And it was toys that they were playing with, and then you see them out in the real world years later and say, wow, that was quite a bit of ways ago. And here you are seeing them now. Now, I'm excited about what's happening not only here in Orlando, but in Central Florida. I'm talking about, all the way from Tampa to the Space Coast, and in between, we have Medical City here. We got Neo City, and there's just so much going on. So tell us a little bit about Florida High Tech Corridor.
Yeah, so great. And there is, and one of the best, it's hard to believe I've been in this position now for almost 2 years. And yet every single day I come across something where I'm going, wow, I never knew that. That's amazing. So it's a nonprofit funded by the state. We're a very small team. There are only 7 of us for 23 counties, and the history of it's 25 years old. Actually follows Interstate 4 from Tampa. That was the whole idea. The whole idea was to take 2 universities at the time. Now it's 3 major anchor universities. So University of South Florida, University of Central Florida, and the Gators up in Gainesville at University of Florida, and really set the conditions to keep, attract and keep small and medium-sized, high-tech, high-growth, innovative firms here in Florida. And that has stayed. That's our legacy. And so those ecosystems that exist and what we do to support them through programs like where we actually have a matching grants program, which means when companies want to do some research with a university, we can match funding with that funding that they put in, and help spur that innovation to really take the technologies and get them out into solving the world problems that are out there. So that's a lot of fun. We engage it with students, not only university students, but we're engaged even earlier in the grade school and high school area about showing them the value of STEM and also creativity. Now that we're kind of opening up from COVID, it just means I'm in my car a lot more, but that's okay. I love books on tape and podcasts and everything else. And so we what we really do is kind of evangelize the magic that goes on here. And it really is magic of what happens. And the Navy doesn't teach you this stuff. You just kind of, as you've learned, you just kind of go meet the people and go do stuff. So it's great fun.
Well, we're definitely happy to have you. And you mentioned, you came in about 2 years ago, right at the height of the pandemic in its inception, and everybody's shutting down. And here you come to take on the Florida High Tech Corridor. So how did how did the pandemic affect you, and how everything played out?
Yeah. So the best bit of advice as I left the Navy was don't rush the journey. So in the fall of 2019, prior to COVID, taking a lot of time and thinking about what to do with the family and what to do with our kids, and bringing them into the discussion. Then the pandemic hit, and 2 weeks later, I got this job. And what was really interesting was, at the time, I never would have said something like, for example, yeah, I'll buy a house without walking in it, but that's what we did. And so there are all these things that happened because of the pandemic. Senior, I'll tell you, there's a hidden blessing. There's a silver lining in what it allowed me to do, because we were doing this all the time. It was Zoom all the time. It allowed me, in the first month in June of 2020, I get to meet 83 people across the corridor. I mean, think about where we were before the pandemic. Nobody even knew what Zoom was. I would never have been able to do that. I would have had my mental model saying, well, I can't possibly do a video call. It has to be in person. And I probably would have done a quarter of the visits with people across the corridor, listening and learning and helping and leading in that order. And really, again, on the listening and learning side, really understanding. And then that really, for me, set a great foundation. So sure, the pandemic, nobody would wish in their wildest dreams to go through a pandemic. For me in this role, was a great scene setter going forward.
Yeah, it's funny that you come in to a tech-centric organization, a tech-centric corridor, as we're talking, and we see it all the time. Everything that's coming out of Tampa, everything that's coming from the Space Coast. You got Space Force, you got all these different things coming up and about. And if the pandemic did anything, it actually forced us to open our eyes to the possibility of allowing tech to make it easier. And that's
Yep.
exactly what happened.
Yep. And as it accelerated certain things. I see it on the university side. Man, it made those universities figure out, oops, I'm not sure if our current model works. And the adoption of technology, which is part and parcel of what we do. I mean, one of the things I talk to the corridor a lot about, and I talk to the stakeholders in the 23 counties about, is, technology for technology's sake doesn't mean anything to me anymore. I've had to change my own definition of technology. It has to be technology with a purpose. It has to be technology that that's focused on community problems and state challenges and global issues, that can spin this technology out. And I think the pandemic really helped that. You saw companies pivot instantly to solving everything from personal protective equipment to transportation issues, logistics. It completely accelerated that chain for sure.
Now, we just covered some of the things that happened here locally and in the last 2 years. But what's on the horizon for the Florida High Tech Corridor?
Yeah, so great question, and I'll take a step back uh, in joining this group, and I'll use I saw one of the things the pandemic allowed me to do was take a lot of time to read, and to watch podcasts and listen to podcasts, and because none of this was all new to me. I didn't understand anything about how these ecosystems work with that support entrepreneurs and founders of companies and what goes into the brain of somebody that wants to do something like that. So it really allowed me to take the time to listen and to learn. It was General Mattis, it was Jim Mattis, who had done a YouTube class with Stanford, and he talked about his own experience of becoming Secretary of Defense. And the 4 words he mentioned in there in his philosophy for guiding that organization early on was, he said, I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, I'm going to help, and I'm going to lead. And that listening and learning journey, I'll be honest, Senior, I thought I could, yeah, that'll take 90 days and that'll standard Navy, 3 months, I'll have this figured out. I'm going to be on this listening and learning journey for a decade at least. And I love that. I love that piece of it. So where is that leading us? I think one of the areas that the corridor has real power in that we haven't taken advantage of, and I'm going to, one of the first things I said to everybody was, we are gonna honor the legacy of 25 years, because there are champions before me that just to have the idea of what the corridor can do was genius. And we're going to challenge status quo every day. So we're treating ourselves like a startup. We're treating ourselves like there shouldn't be any boundary for us shifting and switching and learning and prototyping and those kinds of things. One of the powers that I think the corridor can leverage is that it's regional in scope. So I've 23 counties. And oh, by the way, none of them work for me. So it's 23 counties, though, where we have visibility into exactly what you described, the new technologies, whether it's financial tech in Tampa, or it's ag tech in the agriculture world from UF, or it's modeling and simulation right here in Orlando, or it's, like in the Space Coast, way beyond just launch. How about manufacturing? How about all this other sort of pipeline stuff when you talk about private companies where they're doing 2 launches a week there? Amazing stuff that's going on. So the future, number one, leveraging the region, the power of that region. Another thing we're focused on, and where I think our niche is in serving communities that normally would not see themselves in technology. These are the really underappreciated, folks that you would think, well, that's, they're in agriculture or something, or that's, they're doing something else. We need creativity, and that creativity is not limited to what we might classically see as tech people. This creativity is in the arts. This creativity is in entertainment. This creativity is in all sorts of things that I think add to that innovation spirit. So that to me is the niche of the corridor, and being able to focus in on those things. And if I could describe it in a couple of words, it would be boundary breaking. Now that's my phone. Sorry. What I would say is Um, the couple of words that I would say would be boundary breaking. Um, there are the things that I've learned, and where the magic really happens is is when we break our own mental models. When we whether it's two colleges in a university, the College of the Arts and the College of Engineering, Computer Science, let's say, that start talking to one another about solving a challenge, that's where the real sort of magic happens. And we want to be able to accelerate that kind of across the corridor.
Well, I've always said the true power of technology is the collaboration of those that can actually make it
Yep.
work. And
Yep.
because, like you mentioned earlier, technology for technology's sake, it really doesn't do anything. It has to be something that is actually going to solve an issue or a problem. I'm excited about what the corridor is going to be looking like here in the future. And you mentioned something that keyed me into a leadership point, and we'll transition into the leadership side there
Yeah.
because you mentioned listening. We conducted a leadership survey, and the
Yeah.
survey detailed, I think, more than anything ever, was that listening was one of
Yeah.
those things. So, is there something that you do in your spare time that aids you to thrive in your professional life?
Yeah. No, great question. I, I'm a Stephen Covey fan and educated through Seven Habits. Probably the best habit of all for me that's always resonated both on the personal life and professional life is to first seek to understand and then next to be understood. Don't approach conversations with "I'm going to say this." No, no. This idea of truly being there and listening and understanding. One of the things, Senior, that I've heard a lot, and this goes to the community aspect of innovation, where I think, part of where I think the corridor can help is that community-based innovation. There are great programs across the corridor. I can think of one that's in Tampa, the Foundation for Community-Driven Innovation with Terry Willingham, where it's based in community. And and to be based in community means you need to go to that community. You cannot come up, and I was guilty of this early on. Like, I'm here to help. No, no, no. It's not doing things for other teams and people. It's it's joining alongside and doing things with them. And to me, the only way you can do that is you got to understand them. And the only way you can do that is to take the time to sit down and have a conversation and really listen to really understand. It's very apparent to me that I am I have a very narrow mental model coming from the Navy, as it should be. We're focused on what we need to be focused on. But this sort of opening up of, oh my gosh, look at all that's out there. For me, from a leadership perspective, is has been wonderful. The other thing I would say on leadership for me, and it's what I was not a strike group commander. I was not on the operational side for a lot of my career. We were working with organizations that were military led, but primarily civilian. And in that world, it's really about influence. It's about learning about your team and seeing how that team can go after that goal and bring to bear all the talents on the team. And the only way you can do that is to listen, I think, for sure.
Well, that will definitely get you a long way as a leader. I absolutely agree with that. Now, Amber, you spent 30 plus years, in the Navy, 1 star, 2 star, and leading a technology sector within the test side of the Navy. Now, you must have been given some type of advice to get that far, right? Because you just don't
Yeah.
get there like that. What piece of advice did you receive when you was growing up that you would like to pass to a future
Yeah.
leader?
So um, we haven't met before, but I've already grown to trust you. And so I'll share a story that I don't often share. And I think, and the reason I want to do this is because it made such a difference for me. And it goes right to your point there, senior, about what you were told. So picture this. I'm a young lieutenant in a squadron in VFA 113 out in Lemoore. I was getting ready to fly for my section lead check flight, which means now I can lead another aircraft. And so you're thinking, okay, this is what it's about. And I come out to the jet, hop in the jet, and there's a plane captain there, and that plane captain, this is his aircraft or her aircraft. Um, the aircraft had a maintenance problem, so I got out, and although I would like to believe that I didn't focus my disappointment on the plane captain picked up on that I was disappointed. And I in no way took the time to share with him how much I appreciated him. And now, how did I know all this? Because when I got in and filled out my maintenance gripe, Senior Chief Mike Hassett behind the desk looked at me and said, "Are you through?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "Lieutenant, we need to talk." And I went back into the office with him. And what he shared with me was a day in the life of a plane captain. And he had obviously seen me come in. And he said, this is what it's like to be in Lemoore, California, when on the tarmac it's like 125 degrees. And now all of a sudden, I don't even give that plane captain the time of day. Hey, thanks. This is not your fault. Instead, I was in the mindset of it's all about me. And I think what you and that was, without that discussion with Senior Chief Hassett, I truly believe that was such a monumental sort of wake up call on what is my role. And it put me on the path of finally understanding what, when people say, "Hey, it ain't about you," that's exactly right. And what I've grown to appreciate is it really isn't about me at all. And being able to divorce yourself from this idea that it's not about me, it's not about my career, it's not about anything. It really is about taking care of the sailors, about taking care of the Marines, about taking care of the Coast Guardsmen and the soldiers and the guardians and the airmen. Everything else will work itself out. And that it's hard to understand that, but I've seen that in action in those 33 years, time and time and time again. Again, just so blessed to have those people, folks that work for you, take an interest in you, and you understand it ain't about you, is probably the biggest thing the biggest, best advice I ever got was from a senior chief maintenance guy behind the desk in 113.
And I love that story. Obviously, as a mess member, makes me very proud that that senior chief actually did what we're charged with, right?
And he
Opening.
took, and he had the courage, right?
Yeah.
He had the courage, and he had this really deep voice, and it was just like, and I had great respect for him. I had 10 times the respect for him after we had that discussion, because of what it taught me.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that, sir.
Sure.
That's yeah, truly wonderful. Now, in those 33 years, you've undoubtedly seen a lot of challenges. You've
Mm.
definitely seen a lot of challenges in the last 2 years. But how do you face challenges that you have faced or are currently facing?
Yeah, great question. And I think, as we look back on, I think leadership lessons also have a time period. So what I learned as a lieutenant applies to, young, because we want them. We want them to be snake eaters. We want them to be war fighters. We want them to be, that kind of thing. And then you sort of grow over time on kinds of the things that you learn, and how you learn them. Um, I think we often, and I think it's true now more than ever. Um, I think we often don't take the time to reflect every day. One of the things that has really helped me is to sort of sit back and be able to, and I'll share with you another story. When I was up at Joint Strike Fighter Program Office, and the director there was Major General Mike Howe, who eventually became head of Marine Aviation. Great man, great mentor. And he said, and we sat down, and he would be one of these guys and I was his aide, and he would just sit down and we just talk. And I was just absorbing all this stuff. And he said, "Hey, Paul, you're going to have days as you continue on in the Navy, where you're leading men and women, and it's going to feel like during that day that you have made no difference, that you've tilted at all the bureaucratic windmills. And for sure, the further on you go in the Navy, you realize these bureaucratic windmills are out there." And he said, "What I want you to do is that toward the end of the day, if you feel that way, take time, walk through the office, sit down with somebody, and just say, 'Hey, how you doing?' Just make a difference in one person's life that day. Just highlight that you care." And that has meant the world to me, especially in Zoom. As we think about how impersonal this can be, take the time. One of the things we don't get in these calls very often is the water cooler talk. What happens after the meeting? And we sit there and we was like, okay, everybody done? Good. Click. And I'm off to my next Zoom call. So that I think is probably one of those things that it's a personal thing. The other thing, as I think about it, Senior, is such a great question, is, and it took me a while to zero in on my own kind of three words, three C words that I use that I think about leadership, and it's courage, compassion, and character. And it actually came from a book written by the president of Stanford, John Hennessy, and he talked about leadership for the 21st century, and it really resonated with me. And the particular word that resonates with me now more than ever is compassion. And in fact, I use this story when I was doing a discussion about engineering leadership with University of Central Florida. One of the professors at the end of it stopped by and he says, "That's interesting. I would not have considered a military officer with a leadership tenet of compassion." Right? And I appreciate that thought. I do think that compassion is immensely important, especially today, especially as tight as we're wrapped. I mean, think about, Ukraine going on, pandemic going on, all these things. I think if the idea of compassion is important. So in my own head, as I sort of think, okay, it's not about me. This is not all me. It's not, I'm not the one that's I'm blessed. I've got 3 great kids, great wife, a great career. The compassion for the other person, I think, is really important. And that for me has sort of grown over time.
Yes, I definitely subscribe to compassion. I've seen compassion alone, upscale and overcome a lot of challenges when you just make it equal. You listen. You mentioned listening to understand, which is very important in leadership, and especially during challenging times, because that's usually when you try to, you know, preserve yourself, right? You try to
Yep.
preserve yourself, but in this case, it's best to try to get the understanding of the other person. So wonderful way to overcome and face challenges. and with challenges, sometimes change comes. And we've seen a lot of
Yeah.
change in the last 33 years in serving. I served 26, so I saw a lot of change. We saw change actually at the same time because we were serving at the same time.
Yep.
And change is usually hard to deal with, but what strategies do you implement around times of change?
Yeah. So gosh, another great question. Um, and I'll pose it this way. I think it is human nature to want to control something, to be in control. Not a sort of I need to be in control of everything, but you grasp at things to maintain control. And I think change goes against it's 180 out from that. And if you allow it to happen, if you allow change to occur, and you're like, wait a minute, I want to control that, most likely you can't, because there are, we work in teams more now than that's one huge change that everybody, there isn't a kid there isn't a kid that's going into the workforce that isn't going to be working on a team. Whereas back in the day, I was an engineering student. I would have been sent to a cube at McDonnell Douglas to go, here, work on this piece of gear. It's all about teaming. So I think to recognize that change is inevitable, and embracing it for what it is, and really, I was, again, I have no original leadership thoughts. I suck it up from everybody else. And the idea of realizing that you can't control things, and those that can be very uplifting and empowering, because, like, I can't control that. I can't. Well, what if so and so does this? I can't control it. I will focus on the things that I can do with the team. And and it's not easy. The things that we've been talking about leadership and about change and things like that, it's a muscle. You have to exercise it. You have to. And this goes back to just before we started record. We talk about being out of our comfort zone. I think everybody should be out of the other comfort zone. Another huge friend, mentor, shipmate of mine, Vice Admiral retired Matt Winter. One time I visited him when he was at Joint Strike Fighter, and I said, "Hey, are you comfortable in your job yet?" And he looked at me and he said, "Paul, I never want to be comfortable." And that shocked me a little bit. And then I realized that, he's right. He's right. If we get truly comfortable, it means we're not challenging what the status quo is and where we need to go. And the challenges that we're, climate change and everything else, demands action now. We cannot wait. And so all those things whether it's the great innovation that's going on in the corridor, the education that our kids are going to need for the future, we can't waste time. And so you just sort of embrace the change. The other thing that I would think about, senior, is uh it's what a former Air Force officer, Jim Gertz, Hondo Gertz, and I were in JSF together, and he used to say, and he went up through the ranks and became an SDS, and it's just a great guy. And he said, "Hey, here's an empowering statement that he would tell his teams. Anything you do that you fail at, I can probably fix in 15 minutes. So go out and fail forward and fail fast and learn and do it again." And that is a beautifully empowering thing to have in your head. And I try to set those conditions here in the corridor. Is like, look, let's go. We're going to learn. We're going to try stuff. We're going to prototype things. We're going to treat ourselves like a startup, and we're going to go from there, and we're going to see. And that, being out of that comfort zone, I think, is part of that, is being comfortable being uncomfortable, I guess.
Well, I tell you, there's some power in greeting failure
Mhm.
as a collaborator, right? Because
Mhm.
it's there, whether you
Mhm.
find it first or you find it last. It's always there. So if you greet it and you put your arm around it, It won't be so foreign when it happens and
That's
shows
right.
up.
That's right. And you can get, and I've seen people, and I'm sure I was this way. Heck, take me back to when my aircraft went down. I'm wrapping myself around this failure and sort of wearing it like a coat of arms or something. Well, I would handle that situation totally differently now. What's the big thing? Nothing. We're, thank God the system worked like it did and alerted me to a problem in the aircraft. And that's what it's supposed to do. That's how these things work. Failure is when, and this, senior, failure is when we learn. We learn from those. Everything I've highlighted you and things I've learned typically come from, oh, I screwed that up. Now I'm going to learn from that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Admiral, we're so happy that you're here as the head of the
Thank you.
Florida High Tech Corridor. We are looking for great things to continue, right? 25 years of legacy. You guys are going to continue to do great things. And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you or the Florida High Tech Corridor, how would they do that?
Yeah, so they look up, it's floridahightech.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sure there'll be probably show notes, so zap it. If I had a business card here, I'd show you a QR code. You could scan it, and just Google us, floridahightech.com, Florida High Tech Corridor. It's an amazing organization, and I think the last thing I'll say is thank God for the team I have. These are amazing people, and their hearts and minds and souls and wills are all focused on this stuff. And I have every single day is intensely fun on what we're doing. So thank you, senior, for giving me a chance to spout out a few things.
Outstanding. No, it's been our pleasure, Admiral. And I tell you, folks, we will have that information as part of the show notes and video for you to be able to reach them and see if you can collaborate, break some things.
Absolutely.
So if you want to reach us at the Leadership Void, the Leadership Void at gmail.com is where you will send that correspondence. We would love to hear from you. If you have something that you would like for us to share, a topic in leadership that you would like for us to cover, or a guest maybe that you would like to see with us, we would love to hear that. And I just want to give a couple of things. As a subscription drive and a book giveaway, we're actually giving out this book, Standing O Salute Edition by Scott McGregor. It is a autograph copy, and that is in conjunction with our subscription to the YouTube channel. It is at 184. We're looking to get to 200, so hopefully you'll get us there. 16 more, and we'll be raffling off and giving off that book. Another thing that we share every 1st and 15th at 1900 Eastern is Radio Check. Radio Check was founded and established to give veterans, military spouses, first responders an opportunity to reach out to somebody when they may feel that they can't. And so that is one time that we share once or twice a month on the 1st and the 15th, like a paycheck. So something similar to what all of us know. But it is a way of making sure that we reach out to those that may feel alone, feel they don't have anybody, and give them an opportunity and an avenue to get to somebody. So join us there every 1st and 15th on LinkedIn Live. It's where we stream it. Next week, we'll have another dynamic leader doing great things in and for our community. And we can't forget our sponsors. We're sponsored by the home team of Round Point Mortgage Servicing Corporation, and we couldn't do this without them. Admiral, thank you once again for being with us. We enjoyed talking to you today and are looking for great things coming up.
Thanks, senior. I appreciate it. This was great.